At 27, I had stopped expecting fairness from my family, but I still believed there were certain lines even they wouldn't cross, which was why I almost laughed when my father called me one rainy Tuesday evening and told me to come to his private marina outside Charleston because he had something important to show me. I arrived expecting another argument about my career, only to find my younger brother, Mason, standing beside a brand new luxury yacht with a bottle of champagne in his hand, while my stepmother, Valerie, smiled proudly and announced, "Your father decided Mason is finally responsible enough to resign." Anger gives them room to control the conversation, but silence makes them nervous. So I calmly asked my father why the yacht was registered under Mason's name. Valerie answered before he could, saying that Mason had earned it by being present for the family, while I had spent years chasing strangers' businesses instead of supporting my own relatives. And the casual cruelty of that sentence told me this had been rehearsed long before I arrived. My father wouldn't meet my eyes, and when I asked whether my name had been removed from the family trust, he finally whispered, there were some changes, as though my entire future were an appointment he had accidentally rescheduled. But before I could ask another question, Mason raised his glass and said, "Don't make this about you, Clara. For once, let someone else have the good life." That sentence followed me all the way home, but instead of crying or calling my father back, I asked me one question. "Clara, how certain are you that your father believes this document is still in your possession?" I told her I had no idea, and Rebecca smiled slightly before explaining that the contract had been attached to the original family trust, meaning my father's attorneys should have known about it. But if they had deliberately transferred assets while pretending it didn't exist, the consequences could reach far beyond the yacht. 3 days later, Rebecca discovered something even stranger. Nearly $4 million disappeared from a family investment account during the previous 18 months, with payments divided among companies I had never heard of, and every one of those companies had a connection to Mason. When I saw the records, I recognized several addresses because they belonged to properties I had inspected during an auditing job, and I realized my brother hadn't suddenly become a successful entrepreneur as my family claimed. Someone had been moving family money through shell companies and making his lifestyle look legitimate. I confronted Mason at a coffee shop rather than the family home, and when I placed the transaction records on the table, his confident expression disappeared so quickly that I knew I'd found something real. "You don't understand how business works," he muttered, but I leaned forward and replied, "No, Mason, I understand exactly how business works, which is why I'm asking you why 3 companies you supposedly own have no employees, no inventory, and the same accountant as Dad's private investment firm." He pushed the papers away and accused me of trying to destroy him because I was jealous, but then his phone rang, and when he glanced at the screen, his face turned pale before he stood up and walked outside. I followed from a distance and heard only fragments of the conversation, but one sentence was unmistakable. "She found the grandfather's agreement." Mason returned 5 minutes later, no longer angry, only frightened, and quietly told me, "Clara, you need to stop digging before you understand what you're digging into." That warning changed everything, because I realized Mason wasn't the mastermind, and when Rebecca compared the financial records with old corporate filings, she found that Valerie had secretly taken control of several family subsidiaries after my father's health began declining. She had used Mason as the public face of those businesses, while my father had signed documents without realizing how much authority he was giving away. And the yacht was merely the most visible piece of a much larger scheme. Then came the discovery that broke my heart. My father hadn't actually removed me from the inheritance because he wanted Mason to have everything. Valerie had convinced him that I had secretly rejected the family business years earlier, and she had even shown him forged emails supposedly proving that I wanted nothing to do with the company, which explained every distant conversation, every unanswered message, and every time my father had looked at me as though I had chosen to abandon him. Rebecca arranged a formal meeting at the company's headquarters, and for the first time in years, I sat across from my father without Valerie controlling the conversation. Rebecca placed the original trust agreement, the financial records, and copies of the suspicious transfers on the table, then said calmly, "Graham, your daughter didn't betray this family. Someone has been using your signature and your trust to separate you from your own children." My father stared at the documents for nearly a minute before turning toward Valerie, and the look on his face was not anger at first. It was devastation, because he finally understood that the person he trusted to protect his family had been quietly dismantling it. Valerie tried everything after that, first claiming the transfers were legitimate investments, then insisting Mason had authorized them, and finally accusing me of manipulating my father's illness for financial gain. But Rebecca had already requested an independent forensic audit, and the numbers told a story no emotional speech could erase. Within weeks, the yacht was frozen, the suspicious companies were placed under investigation, and the family trust was transferred to an independent administrator while authorities examined the forged documents and unauthorized transactions. Mason eventually admitted that Valerie had promised him control of the company if he helped her move the money, but he insisted he never understood how much had been taken. And although I couldn't forgive him immediately, I realized that revenge wasn't what I wanted anymore. I wanted my name back, my father's trust back, and the freedom to build something that didn't depend on whether my family considered me worthy of a seat at their table. Months later, my father sold the marina and divided the legitimate assets according to my grandfather's original agreement, while Mason left the company and began rebuilding his life far away from the family business. As for me, I used my inheritance to launch an independent financial auditing firm, and on the night I opened my first office, my father stood beside me holding a framed photograph of my grandfather, telling me, "He always said you were the one who noticed what everyone else ignored." I looked at the empty office around me and realized that the greatest thing my family had ever taken from me was not money. It was the belief that I needed their approval to become someone worth respecting. If there is one lesson I carried from that entire experience, it is this. Sometimes the person being treated like the least important member of a family is actually the only person paying attention to what everyone else is trying to hide. And when the truth finally surfaces, you don't need to scream, threaten, or destroy anyone, because facts have a way of speaking louder than betrayal ever can. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.